Well, welcome to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. And this will be the last video for the RS2 RSC2 build project. I've gotten everything all ready for paint, and with the paint, then you do the decals and the final finish, and it's all done, the assembly and all that. So let me just bring the camera over here real quick. I'll show you what I've got going before I get this all painted. And then I'll get over to the paint bench, get a primer coat on it, and let that dry for a little bit and put the top coat. So let me get the camera over here and we'll get this all taken care of. All right, so in the last video you saw that the sill units were done and the frames and all the sound system was in and all that. So all I had left to do was to get the shells done. So that's what we got here. Now, these shells are basic Kato detailing. I've only done 3 things to them to make them a little bit different. Excuse me. So first off, you'll see I've got the grab irons. Those are the Kato grab irons. One of the things that I did is I put a new brake wheel on. That's a Katie Ajax brake wheel. The original brake wheel's Ajax also, but it's a little bit heavier looking. It doesn't have the nice lattice work and all that kind of stuff on the inside. So I used the Katie brake wheel. The second thing I did is I added an additional horn up on the short hood. This is the original location that Kato has the horn, but Kato gives you 2 horns in the box. So I wanted an additional horn on the short hood, so I've done that. And the third thing I've done is I've added door handles. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on each side. So I've got the door handles taken care of. Those are from CalScale, Elco door handles. So that pretty much takes care of the hood. And then once that was all done, one of the things, if you're doing anything like this, you need to do, there's a fine parting line that runs all the way down the hood where the curvature comes over and meets the tangent to the vertical side. So I took that off. There's also a parting line that comes up behind the grab irons and then goes over to this number board, curves down, and then it comes across here, meets at the sand fill hatch, and then again the same on the other side and the same on the other end. So take all of those parting lines off, and then once that's all done, I grit blasted everything and it's ready for paint. For the cabs, I added the door handles and an antenna, and then there's a parting line that runs across the edge of the roof and down the sides. It's really fine, so it's really easy to take off, and that's on both ends of the cab. And that's all I've done to the cab, so that's all taken care of. So this is all ready for paint here. The interiors, they just got grit blasted. I'll get them painted I think it's like a suede gray or a light gray color. And I'll paint the insides of the hood here. So that all the interior, of course, and also the insides of the cab, so that all the interior is painted different color. The exhaust stacks, they will get painted black, so I'll do those. And what else is left is the windshield wipers. So I've got the windshield wipers. The outside ones are cut a little bit down because these door windows are a little bit smaller. So I had to cut the blade down just a little bit to clear. So those will get painted black or a gloss black, and then I'll put a dull aluminum over that and they'll look really nice. So that takes care of that. Then of course I've got the number board, so I'll have to grit blast the number boards, get those painted black, and put the decals on those. And the 2 last things I have to do. One is I've got all of these, or actually 3 things. So I've got these are all the draft gearboxes, so I need to clean those up and get those painted black. What else? These cab windows, what I'll do is I'll shave off these windshield wipers I'll shave those off, I'll buff it out, and then that should take care of the where I've shaved off the windshield wipers. By buffing it out, it'll clean it up. And then I have them all marked on the cab where the windshield wipers will go, and they will follow the same line, so it'll very well cover up any area where I shaved off that, so the windshield wipers will go right back over where these molded on windshield wipers are. So that'll take care of that, and I'll show you that when I do that. And the last thing to do is to get the lights put in. So what I'm going to do there, and I'll show you all this too, is this is the light tube for it. So I'm going to cut it off. There's my pointer here. So I'm going to cut this off right at the back of this, or where this tube meets where it goes into the shell. I'm going to cut it off right at the back here. And then I will put it into the lathe, and I'll grab it right around this circular portion here, and I will shave it down with the lathe nice and smooth, and then I will drill a hole in it so that this LED can fit right up against the back there, like that. Let me zoom in on it. You can see how far it'll go in. So like I said, I'll be cutting it off right here, cleaning all that up, and then because it's in the lathe, it'll be naturally centered, so I can center drill it for this tip of the LED, and that will go right in basically like that, but in the center, and I'll glue it in. This is exactly what I did with the RS1s. And before I glue this in, when you cut this clear plastic, it'll fog it on the inside. So to get rid of that, and of course I'll go over all this again when I do it, to get rid of that, you put a gloss clear coat in there, let that dry, then put this in there, and the clear coat will give it all the clarity back again. Put this in there, glue it in, and it'll be really, really nice. Nice LED right up front. This is a warm white LED. So I have to do that to all of these. So that takes care of what needs to be done with this project. And hopefully within the next couple weeks I can get that done. So today I'm going to go through and get all of this into a primer gray. All right, as you see here, all of the models are painted. And I wanted to show them in primer gray, but I forgot to make that video before I dove right into painting them orange. The primer color is the same color as the cab interior, but it's a flat paint, so right now it all has a gloss on it. Now, the paint that I use is Tamiya. The colors is X6 orange and X7 red. So I use 5 drops. Or excuse me, the ratio is basically 5 drops of the X6 orange to 1 drop of the X7 red. So I mixed up a whole bunch of paint in those ratios, and that's the color. I really like the finish. It came out really super smooth, as you can see. I mean, look at the top of the cabs there. Those look really nice. And right now they have a clear coat of all-clad aqua gloss over everything. So right now these are ready for decals, so that's my next step on that. Once I get the decals on, I get the decals sealed. I'll get the satin varnish on them, and then I'll go to building the lights for each end and put the cab, put the windshield wipers on, which I have here. These are painted with all-clad dull aluminum and stuff like that. So this is where I'm at right now. It's just a few days. They're just a few days away from being done. All right, so I've got the shells painted, a clear coat on them. I've got the decals on them and a clear coat over the decals. So you'll see all that here shortly. But right now I need to take these windshield wipers off the windows. Now I've done it on 2 of them. As you can see here, you can see the little bit of scuffing on the window from them. And I'll show you how I do that, but I'm going to try to polish all of that out. after I cut it. So I've got a brand new blade in here, and the idea is to slice it. Don't scrape, don't go against the grain, go in line with the wiper, and don't take too much of a cut, because if you take too much of a cut, what it does is it rips it and it'll create a little channel in it. So let me see if we can zoom in a little bit on this, and we'll get one of these sliced off. And that's how I slice them off. Now, like I said, I'm going to try to polish that out with a buffing wheel. And after that, what I'll do is I'll put a clear varnish over it, and it'll help fill it in and stuff. And remember, I've planned my windshield wipers to go along with where these originally are. So hopefully that'll help hide any blemishes as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get all the rest cut off. I got these to do as well on these parts here. Whoop, on these parts here. So I've got to take the windshield wipers off of those too. So I'll get all that done, and I'll get them all cleaned up with the buffing wheel. All right, so I've got all of the windshield wipers sliced off, and I've got everything polished except for this one. Now, polishing them, it doesn't clean them up perfectly, but like I said, hopefully the windshield wipers will take away what will be over what you see there, so it will hide, any blemishes and stuff. If not, it's not too bad, but there's nothing else I can do. I can complain about it all day long. It's not going to make it so that these windshield wipers weren't on there. You got to do something to clean them up, or just live with them the way they are. So to buff them, I take this buffing wheel that you can get from Dremel. I put it on the lowest setting, and I just skim the surface. If you put too much pressure on it, it's going to burn it and melt the plastic. So I just let it skim the surface. And then when taking these windows out, they're really hard to get out, so they scuff on the back a little bit, so I'll try to clean that up. I mean, I'm not really overly thrilled with the way the windows look, but like I said, there's not much I can do about it. Now, I could probably get, work at it with some wet dry sandpaper, increase the grit as I go and get that all polished out, but I think the windshield wipers will probably do their job on that. So now, those are all buffed out. I'll go get some clear coat, and we'll put that over it. Okay, so I'm going to use some all-clad aqua gloss, and I'm only going to put it on the outside of the window. Because if I put it on the inside of the window, when I put these back in the cab, where this piece scrapes up against or holds the front window in, it might scuff the inside of the window again. So I'm just going to dip this into the aqua gloss and just put it on the outside of the window. And just let it fill in where the scuff marks were. Or where the windshield wiper was. And just let that set aside. Do the same thing for this one. I don't have any good flat paintbrushes. All my paintbrushes are all crappy right now. I need to go to the art supply store and get some new ones. So I'll let that level on its own. All right, so that's what I'm going to do for all the rest of these. So you get the idea, and when it's all dry, I'll show you what the results are. All right, well, the cabs are all put together now. So you can see they're decaled, and I've got the windows in. You see the windshield wipers on them. And the part that I scraped off, it's kind of hidden away behind the windshield wipers, so I'm satisfied with that. That looks fine to me. So the next thing I have to do is build the lights. Now I didn't know this, but these headlights come apart. So there's the lens that goes into the shell, and there's the part that goes into the lens. So what I need to do, and I didn't know that when I cut the first one off, so it's a little recessed in there, but that'll be okay. So what I need to do is I need to cut this light tube back behind where the lens is. So just get that cut off. My blade's a little broken here, but that's all right. Still cuts. See if that'll come off. There we go. Take that off. Now you just press that together. Take a little CA, because this has to be glued in, because I can't put an LED in there because because the inside of the lens isn't solid. So I need to glue this in so that I can cut into it, into the light bar. And put the glue the light into it. Alright, so now I got to just let that dry. So I've got all of these done here. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll stick these into the lathe, and I'll trim those back, and then I can center drill them. So let's just let those dry for a while, and then we'll go over to the lathe. Alright, there's something interesting, or not interesting, but that really works to the advantage of putting an LED in these. Now, I showed you in the last clip that these come apart and they're separate pieces, and that I have to glue this lens onto the light tube and then cut the light tube off and such. But what I realized, and then let me step back, and then I was going to put a ball end mill in here and cut it so that this LED will fit in there. But what's really cool, I don't need a ball end mill. I just need I need a flat end mill, and because I'm looking for a pointing tool, never have anything ready when I need it. Okay, so let me zoom in here a second. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. Let me pull this out. Okay, so this is a flat end to it. You can see there. And then we have a cavity that goes all the way down inside there. So this flat end doesn't go all the way to the front. It just goes to a shelf right in here. So that means there's an open cavity between the inside face of the lens and this face here. So when I put it in there, like I said, it only goes this far right here, and then from here to here is an open cavity. So what that does is it allows this light to be unobstructed inside of this lens. So that's, I think it's going to cast a really nice light view, or nice. It'll look really nice when it's turned on. So I should have these done today. So my this one I accidentally didn't put in the lathe secure enough, and when I went to cut it, it just ripped it right out, so it destroyed it. But I do have extras, so I have to do 2 more of these, because this one, when I did it, I cut the light tube off a little too far back, so it recesses on the inside there. So I'm not going to use those 2, but I have extras here. Kato is out of these, but luckily I had bought undecorated shells, which already came with light tubes, and I had decorated shells that had light tubes in them, so I have extras here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one in the big lathe, because it has better clamping around the lens, and I'm going to face this whole section back to the back of the lens here, and then I'll go ahead and glue these together and do the same thing on those, and then I'll put it in the small lathe, and I'll cut a hole right through the center, and this is what they will look like right here. So what'll happen is, and I don't need to show you this on the lathes, they just cut. So here we have the lens. So get that in focus again. Come on. Where's your focus? There we go. So we'll get that in focus there. So now I'll just have to put that into there, put a little CA around it, and that will be my light. And that'll stick out the front of the shell, and I'll have the light right up front, so it'll be really nice. Right, well, here we go with all of the headlights and rear lights. So they're all glued together and ready to be painted. So I have to tape up the lens, and then I'll put a little bit of tape over the metal part, because I still have to solder the wires to them and all that stuff. But basically that's it. So to tape them up, it's very, very simple. Just get a little bit of tape there. Put my optivisors on. It's actually too much tape. And just, let me put it on here. And I just want to wrap it right around the lens. Like that, and just pinch it. There we go. So now, after I put a piece of tape over this little section there, let me do that. So if I put a piece of tape over that section, so you want to put it down just a little bit further. There we go. I want to make sure I get paint all the way on the back side of this LED here. There we go. So now that I got that tape, I can grit blast all of this, and paint will stick to it really, really well. So I'll get all of these done. I'll go grit blast these, and then I can paint them black. And that'll keep the light from bleeding out. All right, so all the lights are ready to be installed. You can see I've got 3 front lights and 3 rear lights ready to go. You can see that the backs of the lenses are painted, and So you saw everything was taped off. I got it painted. I got the wires all soldered in place, and it's all ready to go in. So now all I have to do is put the lights in the shells, wire them up to the DCC board, test it all out, and then put the shell cover or the shell onto the frame, and they're all done. So let me get that going and get that done, and we'll show you the results of the finished models. All right, before I put the cab on this last model, early on in the videos, I don't remember which video it was, but I had talked about how I was going to keep these wires from contacting the or rubbing on the flywheel. Well, what I've done is I've taken a piece of Kapton tape, I've pulled the wires up, and I've taken a piece of Kapton tape and put it over the recess or the opening here, and now these wires can just sit right down on top of that. There's plenty of room in this cavity underneath the cab that the wires can just sit and run right in there. So that worked out really well. So I just wanted to show you that and let you know what my solution was for keeping those wires off the flywheel. Well, the project is done. And at the end of this project, I have to say that I'm extremely happy with the results. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And I'm ready to charge on to doing the RSD12s for the Shawneetown Docks Railway. Now, yesterday, I ran my models. I'll show you the models in just a second. But yesterday I ran my models at my friend's house. He's got this big layout set up in his attic so he can, just relax and, run trains and stuff. It's just a gigantic oval from one end of the house to the other end of the house in his finished attic. And he takes some of his modules to put up there. When he finishes them, he'll bring them up there and work on some other ones. But anyway, I was running these yesterday, and I was thoroughly disgusted with them. They just developed the worst squeaks that you could imagine. I mean, my RS11, my GP35 Pennsylvania, the 3 RS1s, and these 3 just squeaked to no end. And I was just beside myself with anger at why are they squeaking. So I came home yesterday and I put them in the box and I said, okay, I got to move on to something else and stuff. But last night it was eating at me that I really want to run this Shawneetown Docks. I really like the paint scheme. I like the concept of the railroad and all that. And before I went over to Jeff's house on Friday night, I had taken them apart a few times, trying to figure out where the squeak was coming from. I located, it was in the axle tip where it rotates in the pickup strip, in the cup on the pickup strip. So I cleaned them really good and such, and I didn't want to oil them because I remember I greased them before and they still squeaked. And I was like, I don't want to put anything down in there. Well, today I put them on my test track, which you'll see in a moment. I took my yard completely out. I just have one long straight test track because soon my layout's going to be going up and such, and I don't need the yard anymore. But anyway, so I decided, okay, I don't want to do it, but I got to test it and see if it works. Because these things were, the longer they ran, the squeakier and the louder they got. And I was getting ready to put them away and say, well, if I'm going to put them away, let's just give it a test. So I took this, this is Woodland Scenics Hobby Lube. It's the really thick stuff. It's got a heavy viscosity in it. And I took this little tiny paintbrush, see the little tiny tip on it, and I put just enough oil on the tip of this brush so that it moistened it. There wasn't a drop, there was just a little tiny bit of oil. I turned the locomotives upside down. I separated, or I pulled apart the where the pickup strip is on the axle tip so that I could get the brush down in there without touching anything else. And I carefully put it down in there, and I just brushed just a film over the axle tips. And cleaned up all the squeaking, 100%. I ran them back and forth a number of times to see if it was going to clear the oil and then go back to squeaking like it did with the grease, but the oil has stayed on there. Now on the RSC2, the oil kind of interfered with the electrical pickup, but the more I ran it, the more it thinned out, and I got perfect electrical pickup. So I just put just barely enough on there to keep it from the dry rub and squeaking and chirping and all that stuff. So I'm really happy. I've just finished running them in consist back and forth. I got myself one of these AccuTrack speedometers. Phenomenal. I highly recommend these things. They're perfectly matched. What I do is I make a card, and I've got the locomotive numbers here, and then I've got the slow speed, mid-range, high speed, and what the CV settings are for each one of those over here. So now these run perfectly together. They start up together, they slow down together. They're fantastic. So I said I really highly recommend one of these. So the first thing I do is I warm up the motors. Run them around a little bit, get the motors warmed up, and then I do CV54 to set it to 0. Then I get out of the programming, hit the bell, they run and take off, and they do what they're supposed to do, and then I'd go and do the speed matching with these settings. So I highly recommend it. These RS2 and the RSC2 now match my RS1s as well, so they're all matched. Now, on the RS1s, I'm going to go back and do the little oil lube on the axle tips because they're dry, and I can kind of hear a little bit of them wanting to squeak, so I'm going to go do the same thing on those when I'm done with this video. So now, let me get the camera set up over here, and I'll show you what the finished models look like. Then I'll pull the camera back and we'll do a startup and sound test so you can hear what they sound like. I'm telling you guys, I accidentally stumbled on to a speaker chamber that is phenomenal. I have never heard a sound better than these speakers so far. The horn sounds great. The clarity is beautiful. Now the volume is up a little high. I need to dial that down a little bit, but I love the sound of these Alcos. They sound different than the RS1s, and it's just beautiful. So let me get these models over here on the bench. They're on the track right now, and I'll give you a look-see, and then we'll do the sound test. All right, so this is the RSC2 number 2100. You can see what it looks like here. It's all done. Everything's packed in. So the speakers are down here, and the Keep Alive is up front there. So now the RS2s look the same, except for the trucks. So that's the RSC2, and then number 21 or 2001 and 2000 look pretty much the same. So I'll go set these up, and we'll do a sound demonstration, and I think you'll enjoy what they sound like, especially the horn. The horn sounds beautiful. Okay, I'm going to move this camera back just a little because these are loud, and I'm thinking this is going to pick this up loud. So anyway, how's that? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll start up 2001, then I'll do the sounds, and then I'll start up 2000 and 2100, and we'll run them as a set. So let's do 2000. Okay, got that. Start up. Oh, first let me do the horn without any other noises. This thing sounds great. I love the fade out on that horn. So the enclosure has 2 speakers in it. So it's pretty cool. This is what the enclosure, I think I've showed it before, but this is what the enclosure looks like. So there's a speaker here, and then there's a speaker over here. And the chamber goes back into here. All right, let's do the startup. Oh, by the way, forward on these is long hood. On the RS1s, I made it short hood, but on all others, it'll be long hood. So startup. All right, I'll start up 2100 and 2000, and then I'll con system. Okay, I've consisted them. Now I'm going to put the camera over here so you get an idea of the lights. We're gonna go down the line. Well, that takes care of that project. And I'm really, really happy I got the squeak out of it. It was really depressing, finishing these things, all these things, and getting squeaks and stuff like that. So I'm glad I stuck with it, figured it out, and killed the squeak. So anyway, that takes care of that project. The RS2, the RSC2s are done. And I hope you enjoyed that. I know it was a really simple, straightforward, nothing fancy about it, but I like the way it turned out. And I'm going to move on to building the RSD12s. Now, there's not really much to show on the RSD12s. I'm basically going to do the same way that I did these RS2s and the RSC2, pretty much out of the box. The only thing different on it is I will remove the dynamic brakes from them. But that's nothing that you haven't seen me do before as far as filling holes and cutting stuff off and things like that. So I'm going to get those done. Once I get those done, I've got 4 NW2s to do for this railroad, and then I'll be done with the Shawneetown dock stuff. And I will probably, I'm kind of looking to do a full-blown detailed project locomotive again. I'm not sure. It depends on my motivation for it, but we'll see how that goes, and that'll be done on video. So again, if you made it to the end of all this, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that and maybe got something out of it that you can use.